Readers,
reviewers,
trolls,
lend us your ears.
Good morning, evening, everyone. Welcome to everyone in the stands watching us today. Today we have the famous greybeard John Papa Gwynne.
The man, Papa
is
Gwynne himself.
joining us for a little bit of a Q&A. Usually we hound him with questions anyway, but we thought today we would just hound him in front of a camera.
I'm bald for a reason.
So we've got a few questions here for a Q&A for Papa Gwynne from other people as well as ourselves. We thought we'd have some questions that people on the channel would like to listen to your answers. So Shadow of the Gods coming up very soon. Can you give us a little bit of a teaser or a summary about what is in Shadow of the Gods and what will people be excited for?
Okay, so Shadow of the Gods was born out of my love for Norse mythology, Beowulf and Ragnarok, end of days battle where the gods fought to extinction.
I mean, you've grown the beautiful beard in light of Kratos, so...
In honour of Kratos, yes.
Where is he? Somewhere around here, isn't he?
There is a Kratos, yeah.
There he is. Spitting image. It's
Now,
like
we
you
did,
were a model.
now we did want Dada to go and get his
The
tattoo.
necklace is uncanny.
We did want you to get a tattoo of that on your face, but I think Mama would go
Yeah, would
brutal.
it fit on my
Yeah,
side?
she goes back in.
I don't think
Get your
so,
ear
no.
pierced and you can just hang it in.
No, that's divorce
Wade.
level tattoo.
So, are there any talking crows in the Shadow of the Gods?
Yes, is the
In
short
short.
answer.
Very good.
There's two actually. They're not crows, they're ravens.
Very Norse.
Yes, and they're bigger than this shed.
That's terrifying.
That's actually scary.
So obviously Beowulf and Ragnarok, they're two pretty different kind of events, but they're both leaning on lots of mythology. How did the mythology kind of help you writing Shadow of the Gods?
Yeah, I mean they're all in the pantheon. I think when I was a kid, I grew up on mythologies, all different types: Arthurian, Celtic, Greek, and Norse, and I loved it all. But the stories of Beowulf and Grendel and Ragnarok always stuck in my mind.
Yeah.
So that's why I've always had a particular passion for Norse mythology, and that's why I've brainwashed you into becoming Viking reenactors alongside me. So it just comes out of that childhood love and passion for it all. And since we've been doing reenactments, it just feels like just felt like the perfect time. Came to the end of the Banished Lands series. That felt like an appropriate stop point, and when I thought about something new, this was just the obvious thing for me to do.
Yeah, I love how different it is to the Banished Lands, but you've also got kind of the staples there that people love, you know, friendship and hope, but just with some really big monsters. And obviously we know that you love Beowulf because you have about 516 different copies of it and still growing. So what is your favourite edition of Beowulf?
Oh, Tolkien's, definitely.
You can't get better than Tolkien's, can you?
Is Tolkien's written as prose or is it written as
Poetry.
Yeah.
I think that is meant to be more authentic.
I think it's the most authentic translation out there.
I think Seamus Heaney's is more accessible, isn't it?
Yeah, that's great as well. I love that as well. But the language is a little more contemporary, I think, to make it more accessible.
Yeah. And obviously the greatest Beowulf is Ray Winston.
Or Sean Bean.
Yeah. That'd be cool, wouldn't it? Who else was a Beowulf? Was it Gerard Butler?
Was he?
I'm gonna kill
That's right,
Grendel.
yeah.
It's great. I love it.
I like that
But Ray
version,
Winston
actually. It's
was
cool.
my favourite. You know, awesome.
And I've got a wonderful illustrated version by John Howe, I think, the guy who was the Lord of the Rings artist, or one of the Lord of the Rings artists.
Cool.
Yeah, which is fantastic as well.
Beautiful. I'll put some pictures up on the screen.
So obviously Shadow of the Gods, in case people don't know, you don't have to have read The Faithful and the Fallen or of Blood and Bone because it's an entirely new world, the battle planes, Vigrid. And as Ed said, it's got the key themes again of hope and friendship, but it's got a bit of a grittier tone, hasn't it? So why did you really choose to go with that and kind of go in a different direction?
And why does everything smell like urine? Jimmy Nuts, this is for you.
Yeah.
I
That just came out of nowhere.
I don't know. So there were about 17 questions in there.
We've obviously done this
Which
a lot.
one would you like me to focus on first?
Let us focus
The we.
on why have,
Oh, no, okay.
why have you focused on a bit of a grittier
Grittier
tone,
tone.
but maintaining those same themes as the heart of the story?
It felt like it suited the world, you know, the Scandinavian, just the geography is cold and harsh and demanding, and you know, evolution there, it whittles out the weak.
Yeah.
So that was part of it, but also I've always, it feels like it's the story I've always wanted to write but never quite managed to put my thumb on.
Yeah.
You know, so it just, as to why it's grittier than my others, I think it's a less sentimental tale than my others. I haven't really thought about the why. It's just,
It just kind of happened.
yeah,
Quite organic.
Just evolved.
writing's a funny thing. Part of it's planned, but I don't really think massively about these kind of questions. I just, it's more my it's a gut feeling that I just go with. And it felt there, when I was writing the first draft of The Shadow of the Gods, I actually wrote scenes which felt a little bit more sentimental, and I went back and took them out, even if it's just dialogue that felt a bit more in tune with what I'd written in the Banished Lands.
Yeah.
For example, between Orca and her son. And when I read, because the way I write is I write one day, and then when I start writing the next day, I'll read over what I wrote the previous day.
Yeah.
And every time I did that, I ended up taking more out than putting in. And it was usually things of that kind, where it just felt like it needed to be a little bit harsher.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit realer.
That it's a bit of a weird comparison, but it makes me think a bit about Logan. We watched it a few days ago. How it's just a subtext.
Such a good film.
It's more what's left unsaid, isn't it? That's powerful.
Oh, it's
they
amazing.
They say nothing sentimental, yet you're crying at 2-3 different points in the film.
Yeah, they never say anything nice,
Never.
but you feel the emotion. And
Yeah,
exactly.
And I think the world, your world, kind of reflects that icy, cold nature within the people, as well as within the, like you said, the geography. I mean, let's not forget, you have a whole mountain range that is a giant serpent god's back. You know, the Boneback Mountains, which is just awesome. But you know, I love that scene where you see the snake skull,
and the
first
picture
time.
just slowly building.
and it's it basically, for readers, it's the size of a city. You know, and this snake's head, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, going back to your point, I think if you read a lot of the Icelandic sagas and the Prose Edda and Poetic Edda, it's something that really came across to me when I was going through my research for this, was and reading all those old kind of Norse texts, was the pragmatic nature of you know, Scandinavians, of this Norse world. It's very much you know, life is hard, life is brutal, we accept that, and we just try and make the best of it.
Yeah.
And they almost have a sense of humour about it. And there's very, very little sentimentality in there. It's all just practical, pragmatic, with some dark humour thrown in to make life a bit more bearable, I suppose. So that's kind of the tone. Which is different from my Banished Lands books.
Obviously, I've noticed in Shadow of the Gods, there's a few very strong female characters who are women. You know, kind of people talk about the Valkyrie and the Berka warrior who was a female. What kind of influence to have you to have such a strong-minded and physically strong, you know, characters that are warriors in this cold world as well?
Well, I think as a writer, you want. My goal, my aim when I write is to entertain people.
Yeah.
I write stories that I want to read, and really I want to have that feeling that I had, you know, that nostalgic, swept off in a world, to just feel, you know, to have the emotions, and that's why I read. That's what I love to experience when I read, and that's when I know that I am in love with a book. Is when I'm feeling for the characters, for what's happening. You know, that's kind of my yardstick, and that's what I wanted. That's what I strive to do. Is to write characters and write worlds where you feel, whether it's love, hate, anger. Lots of anger usually.
Oh yeah. If you've seen Alan's reviews, then you know exactly the anger.
But that's the goal. I mean, it's a hard thing. You're talking about words on a page, so if you can evoke some emotion from a reader from just the way you align those words on the page, and then. As far as I'm concerned, I'm happy. The job's done.
Yeah. I mean, you take great pleasure in making us cry. I mean, we've learned to. You've actually
I
made.
wouldn't say pleasure.
You smile whenever you. I remember when Ed came out at the end of
Ruin, and I said
we
you
went
have ruined the book, and I was literally. I think there's a picture of me somewhere, and I was just in floods of tears. My face looked like a beetroot, and you looked at me and went.
I mean, you've actually turned us to.
And then you said I'm too Disney because I don't want anyone to die. Come on.
I mean, you've actually made us that when you ask who our favourite characters are, we feel the urge to lie. Because when you've done that before, they've turned up dead the next day.
Your red pen's out.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm killing them. Okay, so talking about strong females in the book, one of the reasons why I want to put strong females in there is because, you know, I am socially minded and I feel it's an issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And so even if it's just writing strong female characters, you know, I feel like I'm just trying to contribute to making the world a better place in a very small way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not too far from the truth. If you look at the mythology, obviously you've got Valkyries and Freya and plenty of other very strong women. But historically also you've got sparse, I admit, but there are references to shield maidens and warriors. For example, the recent discovery in the Birka Graves, and the Birka was the centre of the world at one point for trading. It's certainly one of the biggest trading centres in Scandinavia, and people came from all over the world to trade there. And examining their graves, they examined a grave which was presumed to be an elite warrior, because the skeleton they found was buried with all the accoutrements of a warrior. Yeah. Sword, spear, arrows, sayax, dead horse, you know, everything that went along with the funeral of an elite and respected warrior. It was presumed that he was male, and the bones have been tested, and it was a woman. It's no question, it's a female. And there are other things cropping up like that now, because obviously historians still have their own prejudices, their own the way they're brought up, and their own cultural mindset.
It's just a one-off, but you know, just go study all of the graves, all the skeletons.
There's also a reference to a battle in Sweden, the Battle of Bravol, which is going back, I think it was 7th or 8th century, between Sigurd Hring, who is actually thought to be the father of Ragnar Lodbrok.
Oh, really?
Ragnar Hairy Breeches.
Okay. What a name.
Yeah. Great name. But anyway, so he was a battle he was involved in, and if you read the account, there are shield maidens all over the place, and they are the champions. You know, they're taking on male champions and coming out on top sometimes. Sometimes they die of very grisly deaths, but they're considered elite warriors. Yeah. So, you know, so it's a two-pronged reason why I've chosen to put stronger females really in the forefront of this.
Orca
series.
and Elva.
And what I think is that Viking reenactment, it's a bit more equal there than what's considered to be equal in history, isn't it? You know, there's so many females, like, you know, we've got Mycan and Hazel.
Well, I mean, I would not take on Mycan.
With a Danax. The thing is, what we learned very quickly at reenactment was, you don't kind of change how you fight depending on whether it's a man or a woman.
Exactly.
You defend yourself, and we die equally as much against Mycan with her great Danax, or Hazel with her spear or her pesky arrows.
Yeah, when you should be shot in the face.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's things like that. You know, people don't really realise unless you've had experience with that. So talking about reenactment, is there anything else that kind of you've taken into writing within reenactment?
Oh, absolutely. Reenactment is well, it's reinvigorated my writing, I hope. I feel like, I mean, obviously, a lot of what I wrote in the Banished Lands, I wrote before I was a reenactor. And so, obviously, as a writer, you're using your imagination. So you don't have to do everything to understand.
Or you had a very troubled time in Canada.
Exactly. Crikey. So, but I, in saying that, I feel that doing reenactment has really helped me to understand and grasp the little details that can make, you know, particular passages of my writing just feel more authentic, and maybe give them more layers than I think I had previously. You know, I remember the first day we went, and we were training up on the downs, which is great. I mean, I love that our training is all outdoors. And
in the snow.
Yeah, and in that time
awesome.
in the snowstorm was fantastic. Yeah, so much fun. But the first day when we were given shields, and spears and taught, the first spear drill. And after 10 minutes, my shoulder was burning. It's just burning from holding this shield, which you don't think is particularly heavy, in the ready position. So just little details like that, and then putting your gloves on and then realising you can't buckle up your helmet, for example. So always put on your gloves last. Or just little details.
You see that
like
in Shadow of the Gods a few times.
Especially with Varg, who has, over this journey of the Shadow of the Gods, he's learning kind of the ropes, isn't he?
Yeah, and also just to be clear, it's not always easy and smooth, because as you were witnesses, the first time I tried to put on a coat of mail, I got stuck.
Just saw your eyes poking out from the hole.
Amongst the reenactment traders' tents at the reenactment of the Battle of Hastings, I'm stuck in this coat of mail. I can't get it on, I can't get it off, and all I can hear is people laughing.
There was a crowd.
My wife was the loudest, and then you were just behind her.
No, I did try and put it down, but Mama did say, clear off, I want to laugh.
After we got the camera out.
That was funny though. But it's like you say, it's things like that, isn't it? You don't really realise before you start writing. It surprised me how people can write, combat so well without having experienced the little details like that. Like you see Joe Abercrombie's, writing his combat is like feel like you're in the thick of it, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah. And Bernard Cornwell.
Unless again, he's had a very troubled upbringing, and he's maybe he learned you should never have too many knives.
But it's just those touches of authenticity that it's. We actually chatted with Adrian Selby, and he said that he loves to look at the little details that make it a lot more intimate, and something that only someone who's experienced those events would actually think of and notice. And it's just touches like that, isn't it?
Adrian's great. I loved his Winter Road. What a book!
Brother Red is great.
I haven't read that one yet.
Yeah, I think it's just he goes for kind of some small story, but because of that theme of hope again, which you see in Faith from the Fallen and of Blood and Bone and in Shadow of the Gods, and that's something that I will never get tired of.
So talking about books then, so obviously once people read Shadow of the Gods, which everyone must do, after they finished it and they still want that taste of Norse culture and mythology, what would you recommend them to go and read after that? It could be non-fiction, could be historical, could be fantasy. What would you recommend?
Okay, I mean, if you're talking novels, I would rate Robert Lowe as the first stop for Viking fiction. He's a reenactor himself. I think he was a war journalist.
Oh, really?
Previous life,
in Vietnam, I think.
But he's written a series called The Oath Sworn, and it's I really rate it very highly. I think it's fantastic. Giles Christian also has written some great Viking novels. If you want to move out of the kind of novel region into more mythology, and obviously Neil Gaiman's mythology is a great starting point. But go back to the source, and that's the prose Edda, the poetic Edda, the Icelandic sagas. That's really where it'll you can find the roots of it. So I'd recommend trying them if the other stuff doesn't quite
fulfill you.
And they're so quirky as well, aren't they? The characters within them, and it just shows off what is Norse, I think.
Yeah, like I was saying, that pragmatic sense of humour.
So now we're going to turn to some questions from readers. Sadly, we might not be able to get to them all, but we'll try and get through as many quick fire ones as we can.
So firstly, from Dan Eady. Dan Eady said, how do you plot out the geography for epic battle scenes? Do you draw maps and diagrams, etc.? So for battle scenes?
Yeah, very loosely. I base really with my maps. I try and keep them as sparse as possible until I've written the story, and then I try and fit the geography around what suits the story. Because I find if I draw the map first and work all that out first, then it almost becomes like restrictive.
You're stuck in even though it's in pencil.
Exactly. So so I might think, well, I think this would be more fun if it was a river ford combat, or if it was in the woods, or if they're if they're in the high ground, or if it's snowing. And I try and write the scenes before I really fill in the geography. I have a rough sense of the geography, and with in the Shadow of the Gods, that it was just Norse. It was fjords, mountains, very cold. That was the general idea. But I try and hold back on the real details until I'm working through the story, and I just think what would suit scene better, you know.
Yeah.
Because like if you've drawn a map, it's like finalised.
Yeah,
isn't
would
it?
this scrap be better in a pub or in the street, or you know?
Yeah,
That's how I work it out.
So obviously the readers have only read the Banishlands up until now. There's a handful that have read Shadow of the Gods. Can you give anyone kind of a taster or a tease how the geography with battles is different in Shadow of the Gods? Maybe an example to the Banishlands, what they would have seen before.
Okay, well again, I've tried to be, with this new series, I've tried to be both more historical and also more fantastical.
Yeah.
So there's kind of the history is very much what I've found in Norse mythology and Scandinavian history for the Viking era. So all the clothes they wear, the food they eat, the weapons they use, the terminology, even exactly, even down to the way they talk. I tried to make it feel more historical. But I've also tried to make it feel more fantastical as well. So I did that by just putting in a lot more monsters. There's a lot of monsters in this, which most of them, I've made up a few myself, but most of them have come from Scandinavian folklore, and I've tried to find things that aren't that isn't just in the kind of top level of Norse mythology. They're like trolls, for example. Trolls are in it, but they're not the only monsters. And
I won't mention a detail about the trolls.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. And so there's a lot of tips of the hat to Norse mythology in the Bloodsworn Saga. For example, there is a rainbow bridge, but hopefully I've given it my own twist and approach. So it's not by
they fight with
pretty awesome. As they do.
Yeah. So they're excuse me. So if you're into your Norse mythology, I hope that you'll see a lot of little things like that where it's just a little tip of the hat to the mythology that I love. Yeah. But I don't want to just copy it. Yeah. I don't want to copy Norse mythology. I want to kind of use it as my springboard for a new world which feels Norse in tone but feels like its own place.
Yeah, so you don't have to understand all these references for it to actually be impactful.
No, not at all. No, it's just a kind of Easter eggs, for people that do. But hopefully it'll be an entertaining tale for people that have just come to it without any knowledge of Norse mythology.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky enough that if we ever have a question, we just run to you. Just pepper you with another springboard of arrows to take up. But for everyone else, that it really doesn't change. I guess it's a bit like very different, but Kings of the Wild with the 70s rock references. I didn't understand them, but I still love.
Even though we listened to Led Zeppelin, and like Rush and that kind of stuff, I couldn't pick out a reference like that. When I looked them up, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But
exactly like that.
Okay, so we've got two here from Esteban Fantasy Eater. Thank you, Esteban. What advice would you give for anyone wanting to write action and suspense? And also, what were your inspirations for the beautiful animal companion? So first of all, let's go to what advice would you give for anyone wanting to write good action and suspense?
I find that hard to answer because
you can't write what you know.
I don't really overthink that. I just do it. It's a very, very much a gut thing.
What a show!
I mean, I don't mean it.
I just write it.
I'm sorry. I can tell you what inspires my kind of writing of combat, if that might help. Yeah. When I started writing, I was very mindful of the film Braveheart, Mel Gibson's William Wallace. Well, when I saw that back in '95, I think it came out. It was quite groundbreaking in the way that it portrayed combat. Yeah. Especially in a swords and sandals kind of medieval type setting. I think it was being done in more modern warfare like Platoon and things like that. But certainly not in a medieval setting where all the glory was taken out of it. And it felt like...
It's shocking and intimate, isn't it?
Absolutely. It felt like you're actually standing there with them. Yeah. And there's just horrible chaos, death all around you. It's frantic. It's kaleidoscopic, the way these fractured images are coming at you. And it felt a lot more realistic and authentic than anything that I'd seen before. And so that kind of stuck with me when I was writing combat. I also, I don't know, I can only speak for how I write, but I always see the scene in my head, and I'm just trying to write down what I can see in my head.
Yeah.
Rather than working it out as a choreography, I just kind of I can see it happening.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to get that down as clearly and as unconfusingly as I can.
So this is why when we see you making a cup of tea, you're like this.
You're still
And,
just in mode.
and then we're like, oh, can you do the dishwasher? And really you're thinking, and he just chopped his head off.
We just see you zone out sometimes.
And all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So is that what it's
I'm
like?
not answering that.
Yeah, I went to my mum and I think you're crazy. So talking about battles then, what have you got any favourite battles on TV or in film? What are your favourite or skirmishes or duels? What are your favourite action sequences?
Oh crikey, yeah. I mean, if I would say the opening of The Revenant.
Oh, that
is
is just so intense.
It's so intense, and that has the same feel on film that as I see my battle scenes happening. I'll never be able to catch the beauty of that opening scene. It's raw and visceral and beautifully shot.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how I see my combat scenes playing out. So yeah, if I was going to compare to something on film,
so honing in on kind of smaller images and those individual conflicts.
I think so. I think in combat, I always try and keep the characters at the heart of it.
Yeah.
Rather than kind of a bird's eye view.
Otherwise, just ants, walking over each other, and you don't have the same impact.
Yeah.
Although if you've got warriors with wings, then you can have a bird's
Yeah.
eye view.
Yeah.
Which is quite
Okay, I see why you did that now.
I guess. Oh, so you were talking about how these scenes you just write them as they kind of come to you, and that leads on to a question about. I think George R. R. Martin said there's two types of categories for writers: the gardeners and the architects. And it seems like you do a bit of both, but you're more of a gardener, aren't you? You kind of have the end goal, but the route you're going to take to get there, you're not really sure.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I do some plotting, and mostly that plotting is just a series of events.
Yeah.
And that's how The Shadow of the Gods started, with these events, with the exception of one character, and then I came up with the characters to best show those events, really. Apart from Orca, who was always, I think she was the beginning.
I remember,
of the whole story. She was the character that I was kind of framing it all around. So I think it's in combat, it's really important to keep your characters at the centre of what's going on, because they're the heart of it. And again, going back to films, I do a lot of references to films, I suppose, more than books. But for Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings, I remember watching the the accessories,
as everyone should do.
Yeah.
The appendix.
The appendices.
So, appendices, that's it.
So I remember watching the appendices, and Peter Jackson was saying in Helm's Deep, Battle of Helm's Deep, that every shot he'd do a wide shot and then a close character shot.
Oh, okay.
Because all this big epicness doesn't mean anything unless it's rooted in the characters.
Yeah.
So he'd go wide and then he'd go narrow.
Meeting in the
Then you see
middle,
the impact of that they've broken the wall, and then you hone in to see all the people laying down when the walls exploded. And then
exactly. And Legolas surfing down.
Will you ever have surfing in your book on a shield?
I'm still working on it. But so I think with combat, it's really important to keep your characters at the heart of it.
Yeah.
So a quick fire one. This is from Rand. He said, from someone who's only just started and was heartbroken by the ending to Malice. So Rand hasn't read any more after Malice. Is there a particular emotion hoped from you for the readers as they go through the story, or is any strong emotion from the readers considered a win?
Yeah, I mean, I think I touched upon that earlier. Yeah, really, any emotion is what you're hoping for. Obviously, the correct emotion to fit the scene, hopefully, rather than just hatred and just throwing the book away. But if you can elicit any kind of emotion from a reader, then it's that you've done your job. I think as a writer, that's the holy grail to get some emotion.
Yeah.
So I'm always happy if someone messages me and said they've been in tears.
You sick.
At least someone benefits from it.
It always makes my day.
And another question was, will you ever return to the Banished Lands? Because obviously you've deviated and you're in a completely new world where you don't have to have read any of your backlog. But is the Banished Lands ever going to call to you again, do you think?
The answer is maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Obviously, I love the Banished Lands. You know, I spent my whole writing career up to this point was, you know, almost 20 years. Not I've been published for 20 years, but it's been around 20 years
Planning
since I
Malice
started
for 10,
working on Malice. Has been, you know, immersed in the Banished Lands, and so. And there are stories left there that could be told, I think, either moving forward from the last book, The Time of Courage, or going back to prequels. And it's things I've thought about doing.
It's always hard doing prequels, isn't it? Because people know how it ends.
Exactly. There is a difficulty with prequels in that it takes a lot of the drama out of it because, like you said, you know how it's going to end. So I'd have to feel that the story... excuse me, and the characters were you know, strong enough to to work for that, and also, you know, it's not just it's a conversation that I have to have with my agent Julie Crisp and with my publishers, to see what they're actually interested in. Because you know,
it's not as simple as
it's not just what you want to write.
Yeah. At the moment, I'm really happy working on this new world. It's a place I feel very comfortable in, and I'm enjoying writing this new world. It feels fresh, and so I'm happy to stay there for a while. But I would definitely not rule out going back to the Banished Lands at some point down the line, or moving on to another world. I have other ideas for different worlds, but that, you know, they're just small ideas.
What about maybe a few more short stories? Because you've written a few with Bala, Matt Quinn, and they're awesome.
That'd be cool.
So would you entertain the idea of doing quite a few more short stories in Banished Lands?
Yeah, I think I would. I think I gravitate to longer stories. Writing shorter stories I find harder work.
Why is that?
I don't know. Maybe it's because I tend to do multi-point of view, and that just makes a story bigger because you're telling, you know, you're moving characters together forward, whereas if it's a singular character, then obviously it's faster paced.
There's a lot of preparation that goes into a short story like that, especially in a world that you've already made.
I imagine it has to be a lot more concise, doesn't it? You've got a restricted word count.
It's basically, you know, you have to work within the word count, and there's a lot more pressure to just do the things that need to be done in a shorter space. So it's not my natural habitat, I don't think, short stories. And the other issue, although I do enjoy writing them when I get the time, the other issue is time. And as you guys know, I have issues with my timing. So you know, if I had free time, then I would probably write more short stories. But I find that I'm always just working to the deadline.
Time is the enemy.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Because there are other projects that I'd really like to be spending time with, but you have to put the work you're contracted for first. And so if I could actually come in a lot earlier than writing up until the 11th hour, then I'd have more time for that. Hopefully, I'm going to change my life.
I mean, I think you're giving yourself a hard time though, because you put out a book every year, which is really hard. I mean, you look at, you know, there's lots of other authors that don't quite put out that much in there, you know, so
every other year.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, don't give yourself a hard time.
You may leave it to the end, but you do still deliver.
Yeah, you like that uni, weren't you?
I mean
exactly.
This is who I got it from. I've never submitted a deadline before.
I had too many nights up all night. You know, caffeine. Deadline at 9 a.m. in the morning.
Pressure produces diamonds. Okay, pressure produces
rough
diamonds.
One.
You have to. So, sticking with the Banished Lands for a little bit, then, is there anything that, are like any kind of storylines that you had to trim down or cut that you were really enjoying? Like maybe Julie Crisp got her red pen out a bit too much, or was there anything there that you could have?
A vicious woman, Julie Crisp. I mean, really only. For Malice. Malice was huge. It was over 300,000 words, I think, the draft that I submitted. And I'd edited that down. Crikey.
By 200,000.
So something crazy. But so there were probably like side plots. I remember a couple of characters got merged into one character and trimmed. There were at one point 2 or 3 more friends of Corban and the gang,
Yeah.
and I kind of condensed them into one.
Yeah.
So I took the scenes that I enjoyed with them and put them all into one character. That was Farrell. So that went. And there was another strand. I don't know if you remember at where there was a duel between spoilers here, Tull and Morkant.
Yes.
And that was over.
Yeah, that's it.
Three mysterious figures that Brennan was harbouring that Rin wanted him to give back.
Yeah.
And there was a plot line with those three characters, but after talking it over with my editor Julie, she just felt like it didn't really add to the story.
Yeah.
And so it would be better just to remove that one entirely. So that's what I did.
Who were they going
you
to
should
be?
listen to your editor.
Yeah.
That goes without saying. So it was the whole plot line where it was expanding the politics in Rin's country, Cambrin.
Yeah.
With and how she dealt with people. So
in a mean way.
Dealt with people in one way
that's a
to
good
put
way.
it.
So it was a bit of kind of a show not tell way of Rin's approach to governing. But then I think you get enough of of that anyway. So
your verbs here, the choice
right.
is funny.
So we had a question from Tamara, and she said, what has been your favourite point of view up to date to write about, and also what was your hardest?
Okay,
Cogs are term.
Yeah, you have to remember I'm old. Okay, so it's easier to remember my more recent.
Old for a reason.
Yeah, yeah. I hope so.
You are a greybeard.
But so, from my recent experience, my favourite character to write is Orca. Without any question, I felt like I knew her from the first sentence.
Yeah.
And I was pretty clear on the events in her arc as well. So it felt like I was just the messenger. Just writing something that was very clear. Going back to the Banished Lands, Matt Quinn was probably one of my favourite characters to write.
I mean,
Two for vengeance,
really?
one for love.
Because you did so much bad stuff.
Yeah, why would you hurt him?
Your
so
favourite?
much?
Oh, this is why you hurt me, obviously.
Well, and that's interesting as well.
Ignore that.
Because I didn't initially plan for Matt Quinn to be a POV when I started writing, but who's the kid he was? Castell. So Matt Quinn was not initially intended to be a POV taking over from book 2, but again, this is Julie's fault. She, when she did her edit on Malice, she said, obviously she was very nice about the things she said about it, but she said she felt that more people needed to die at the end. I don't know, I thought I'd killed quite a few people ending. As it was, but so I chose there was a scenario where Castell had a fight and it was left undisclosed whether he'd survived or not, so I thought that was probably the most appropriate person to actually kill. And so the story that I was planning on writing with Castell, the torch was passed to Matt Quinn, and his story just kind of blossomed.
And that's many people's favourite as well.
Crazy how it just came from Julie making that decision.
Yeah, because I hadn't planned it from his point of view. He was always going to be in it.
Yeah.
But
you probably would have just killed him in the second
you would have killed him anyway.
Maybe. So that's a good idea of how organic writing can be. As far as the most difficult to write, again, I've just finished book 2 of the Bloodsworn saga. It's called Dead Gods Rising at the moment, and there's a new character in there called Guthvar, and I chose to make him a POV because
he's a git,
basically because there is a scene at the end of the story that I was seeing, and I needed a new pair of eyes to see that. So I've come up with his whole thread as a means of getting him to witness this final scene. And even though I'm really happy with how he's turned out, I feel like he's probably one of the stronger characters in book 2 now. Hopefully, I'll let you be the judge of that though. But
he's very different.
He's very different. That's one way to put it.
Yeah, he's quite different from the characters I've written before. So hopefully, he'll be interesting.
Yeah.
But but writing his thread was a bit like walking through a swamp. Sorry, a stomp. So writing his
Crack lives in a stomp.
yeah, writing his thread was like walking through a swamp.
Yeah.
So you're testing out each foothold before you can't run through it.
Yeah.
You just treading very carefully, testing the ground, and then onto the next bit.
Sure.
So yeah, I find him quite difficult to write, but challenging.
Yeah.
And fun, and that's part of writing. I suppose some of it comes easy, some of it's hard
Yeah,
work.
of course. So, Papa, what are your favourite fantasy series?
Obviously, Lord of the Rings was
The Holy Grail.
Yeah,
Will always be there.
My sister gave me The Hobbit when I was, I don't know, 10, something like that, and that was it.
Yeah.
Actually, I was sold on fantasy before then, but that sealed the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The book that started it all off was the Book of Three by Lloyd Alexander, which I remember my teacher reading to me at school.
Yeah.
Sat us all around in a circle and just got this book out, and I loved it. It's, if you're not familiar with it, it's inspired by Welsh mythology,
Which we love.
yeah, and that just lit the spark for me for loving fantasy.
Just caught
So,
it.
is that where you got Storm from? An oracular pig, Storm.
That has
not
go
too much
quite a
between them, I
journey.
guess.
Yeah.
No, not quite. But the Book of Three started off the that slippery slope for me, and then my sister
now
gave
look
me
at
The
you.
Hobbit, and then it was just I was sliding down the hill of hobbits and dragons and minotaurs.
Yeah.
So that got you started. What about kind of more recent, modern stuff, modern fantasy?
Okay, so I'd say Lord of the Rings is the foundation for me. Then
Yeah.
after that, really the next series that really just stands out as really hooking me, or not so much a series, but a writer, is David Gemmell,
Yeah.
who is a massive inspiration to me. He's part of the reason I write, I think. And I remember when I got Legend, his first book, it's the first book that I stayed up most of the night to read, because I just couldn't stop reading.
Yeah.
It was that one more page feeling, which I love, and even though I'd loved reading before then, that was the first time that I'd really experienced that I actually
I'm not
going to
go to
stop.
sleep.
Yeah.
I have to know what happens next.
Yeah.
So Gemmell was the master of that, I think, and that was Legend in his Draenei series, and there are so many books in his
Druss is so
catalogue.
cool.
Yeah, I
He's
love
awesome.
Druss.
We need to read more Gemmell, I think, don't we? You've read a bit more than I
Yeah,
have.
I've written Waylander series.
Yeah, Waylander, what a character.
Regante.
So
Sword in the
Regante
Storm.
is probably my favourite
Yeah.
of Gemmell's series, especially book one.
Oh,
it's
Sword,
so
Sword in the Storm.
brilliant.
So good.
So I want to read it again now.
Yes, I love that. So Tolkien and Gemmell, and then another guy who I would mention who isn't actually a fantasy writer, but he wrote something which kind of straddles fantasy and history, is Bernard Cornwell's series on Arthur.
Not the Holy Grail, but
No, not the one on the Grail, but the one on Arthur.
yeah.
Which is actually here.
Yeah,
fantastic.
it's one of my
With
all-time
Derval and-
favourite
yeah.
series. I love everything about it. It's just wonderful. So those are probably my three biggest inspirations.
Yeah.
People writing now, I mean, there's so many great writers out there now. Joe Abercrombie's got to be at the top of my list for books that I just love to read.
Yeah.
I don't think there are many writers, if any, that could what character they're writing about just by the dialogue.
Yeah.
He is a genius, although I would never tell him that. In fact, my claim to fame was when I won, or when Malice won the Morningstar Award, David Gemmell,
Yeah.
which was, that was an amazing moment. I never thought
definitely.
anything like that was going to happen. And so that was an amazing moment. And what sealed the night was because Joe Abercrombie was there and he called me a bastard.
In true Abercrombie fashion.
Yeah. So I was really
And
chuffed.
never has anyone taken that insult better.
Yeah. I think you're probably the only person who's called a bastard.
You smiled
You've
back.
Then
Oh,
laughed
yeah,
at yourself.
I think I said thank you. That was great. So Joe's great. There are so many others, Mark Lawrence. I'm a big fan of Christian Cameron's writing. I love his style, his prose. Sebastian de Castell, Peter McLean series I've read recently, which I really, really loved. I'm waiting for book 3 in that. So many.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, isn't there? There's just too many to read, isn't there?
Well, yeah, and that's part of the paradox of writing as well. It's annoying because obviously I'm never going to complain that I'm being published, which is a dream come true. But you just have so much less time to read.
Yeah.
You know, because obviously a lot of your
double-edged sword.
Your time is writing, and when I am reading, a lot of my time is taken up with research for what I'm writing.
Yeah.
You know? And talking of books that I've been reading recently, I've just read J. Christoph's Empire of the Vampire, which is just staggering. It's brilliant. I mean, I read Jay's first series, which I enjoyed a lot, but I mean, this is it was a page turner like Legend. You know, it's fantastic, and it's basically Blade goes to Hogwarts, which I mean, how cool is that?
That is the coolest synopsis ever. I'm reading that.
Yeah, so I love that.
Yeah,
it's a phenomenal book.
The cover's great too. Both of them actually are beautiful.
Yeah, it's just one of those kind of X factor moments where everything is done right.
Yeah, and one of the many benefits being an author is you've got that early, because it comes out in September, I think.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. Yeah, I think a lot of people want to read this book.
Yeah,
and rightly so, because it's fantastic.
So now we're going to do just some quick fire ones, that are just a few word answers, but we'll get as many done as possible.
Do you enjoy science fiction?
Yes, for some reason I prefer to watch it rather than read it.
Okay.
But I do read some science fiction. Obviously, I love Dune.
Yeah.
And recently, Adrian Tchaikovsky's
Children of Time.
Children of Time.
Even though the spiders would have given you nightmares.
They did. Yeah, actually, they still do. Yeah. But that's fantastic. Yeah. So I read the occasional kind of drop of sci-fi.
And another question we had from a reader is, what's your favourite epic poem? I think I know the answer.
Beowulf.
There we go.
What inspires you to use Gaelic Irish as the Giants' language?
I mean, there's a few things going into that. Partly, I love Celtic mythology, and the Banished Lands was, even though there are other mythologies in there, the heart of that started with my love for Celtic mythology.
Cuchulainn.
Cuchulainn, actually.
Yes. There you go, then.
Even that's one. Cuchulainn, I think.
Oh, is it? Yeah. I'm sure Philip Chase could give us a lesson, couldn't he?
He's probably better at pronunciations than I am from my own stories, But yeah, so I love Irish mythology, Celtic mythology, and a lot of the giant clans are based on Irish mythology, because they have these peoples, the gods of Irish mythology, were they were basically other species which were like giants.
Yeah.
So you've got the Fomoriai, you've got the Firbolg, the Tuatha De Danann.
Yeah.
And they'd often war amongst themselves in Irish mythology. So they were kind of the inspirations for the giant clans in the western part of the Banished Lands. I try and make the other giant clans feel more authentic to their regions. So you've got the Jotun from the kind of the north, which is a kind of tip of the hat to Norse mythology. Then you've got the Hunan in kind of Central Europe, which is a Germanic name for giants, and so on.
Shechem are in Tarbesh, aren't they, with the giant drakes?
Which is kind of an Arabic.
Yeah, and they ride drakes, obviously, which is kind of more that desert kind of environment, isn't it?
That's right.
So, talking about the giants, a reader did say, when you named the giants the Benoth, were you thinking of banoffee pie? And apparently you make them hungry every time they read about the Benoth giants.
I wasn't, although banoffee pie was actually invented just around the corner from here.
Was it?
Yeah, in
cool.
the Hungry Monkey in Alfriston.
Oh, brilliant.
And I do like a bit of banoffee pie.
No, the thing is, now whenever I read it, I'm just going to be thinking of the Banoffee giant, the Banoffee giants.
In the tensest scenes, that's just going to take the image.
They were lifted straight out of Irish mythology, the Banothii.
Cool. This is a question from the awesome Petrick, and he said, who is Lycos and Calidus based on? Who hurt you, John?
I don't think that's fair, Patrick. I mean, they're not really based on anyone in the way that I've based some characters on historical figures.
I was going to say, I really hope not.
It's actually based on you, my son.
Yeah, you too.
So you're Lycos and you're Calidus. Brilliant.
No, that was more a kind of a tip of the hat to Machiavelli's The Prince.
Oh, yeah, awesome.
Yeah, well, and Nether was included in all of that as well. Because what part of the research I did for Malice and the Banished Lands was just looking at those kind of older texts. So Paradise Lost was obviously a big influence, and then books like Dante's.
I mean, you got
Inferno.
your name from Paradise Lost, didn't
Exactly, yeah. The
What,
books.
John? Sorry, I just say it.
Malice started off as its title was So Deep a Malice.
Yeah.
And I submitted it. Just trimmed down, but yeah. So there is a massive inspiration for the whole sort.
A kind of a mixing pot of all those old texts and
Yeah.
sources, kind of
Yeah.
stuff into one.
Yeah. So Calidus and Lycos were inspired by Machiavelli. Really,
yeah.
Calidus is the the puppet master.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they are just that different type of politician, aren't they? That
Yeah.
they're amoral. They don't care if someone saves life as long as they don't get in their way. Their conquest isn't to kill everyone; it's just to win.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Whereas and Lycos was the prince. He was
Yeah.
the power hungry. Just I want power.
Yeah.
I want to be at the top of my tree.
Mm-hmm.
And when he got there, it was not quite what he'd
Bit
expected.
disappointing.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay, so the next question then. So if you and your family got the chance to travel back in time for a few days/weeks, which country and age would it be? What would you like to see and do there? What would you love to take with you on your journey back? Weapons, and would you come back at all? Would you be murdered?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
I would probably go back to the 5th century in Britain and see if Arthur was actually a real person.
Not 1996, so you could see me being born again.
Sorry, Ed. I didn't spring to mind. I'm afraid.
Okay. Guess I'm
Shame
not
on
a
me.
favourite. So
Arthur's
then.
more important.
Yeah, I guess
Sorry.
so.
He's already seen
I do
you.
understand that.
He's
I've
already
always
seen
been
you.
a little bit obsessed with Arthur
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Arthur in mythology, so I'd love to know if he was actually there was any historical route.
There is.
I
I won't hear
100%
anything else
I
about
believe
it.
in that
Go back to
100%.
maybe Baden Hill as long as I'm a safe distance away from it. Yeah.
You're the monk.
Yeah, don't.
writing.
There's Arthur axe.
As to whether I'd stay or come back, I'd definitely come back because I don't think they had Haagen-Dazs 4th century.
Or
really.
banoffee pie.
Yeah, or central heating.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. What's more important, central heating or food?
Yeah.
So another question here from Shauna. She said, as someone who's trying to get published, what advice would you give?
Okay. I mean, again, I can only speak from my own experience to that. And when I started writing, I wasn't thinking about being published.
Yeah.
I wrote Malice for you guys, really.
Yeah.
It was just a story I wanted to write for you. It was a hobby for me to start writing. I hadn't done anything. I hadn't written anything creatively. Sorry, am I boring?
Sorry.
That's the 4th time you've yawned. I can't believe that, Will.
It's
I know
really
we talk to
interesting.
Dada all the time, but
You've heard it all
Oh,
before.
you have asked
really.
so many times. No, carry on.
So where was it? So yeah. So I was getting published. Really the only mantra was write what you want to read.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I just wrote a story that I hoped I'd enjoy, and then you hope that other people would feel the same way.
yeah.
And I wrote it really with you guys in mind, and James, your brother, and my wife. Really, just my family were
Yeah.
my target audience. So towards the end of that, I started. Well, you guys were reading a bit of it, and my wife Caroline, your mother.
I've met her actually.
Once or twice.
Yeah. She was reading it as well, and you guys were all saying this is great, which obviously you would anyway.
Because you weren't paying us at the time.
No, that's right. Well, I was feeding you.
Yeah.
There was an element.
So
of
nothing-
price.
So would your advice then be just to write what you want to
So,
read, what you want to write
I
about?
think that I think it's very easy once you start researching to get caught up in I need to do this, that, and the other if I want to be published, and to an extent you have to bear in mind kind of commercial interests. I think so. It's good to have that in your mind, but if that becomes your focus,
Presses, yeah.
then I don't think you're going to come out with something that's passionate.
And what you've told me before as well. Obviously, I've given you loads of crap stuff I've written, and your advice has been, firstly, bin it, and secondly, you need to be prepared to kind of change what you've written rather than being stuck in I've already written these few chapters. If it needs to change for the story, then it needs to change, doesn't it, to make it better? So you need to be willing to
Absolutely.
tear it apart. And obviously, like Malice, like you said, you submitted a 300,000 word masterpiece. But you still had to trim it and change it. You know, lots of things changed, especially in the first place. And obviously nowadays you don't have anything as drastic as those kind of edits, because you've got better and better at knowing what the story needs.
But there's still alterations when you look at everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote a completely different beginning to Malice, which I binned.
Yeah.
You know, it just didn't. When I went back, it didn't feel right. But so, you have to be open to being the harsh. Try and be the harshest editor.
Yeah.
You know, because if you're fortunate enough to get taken up by an agent and then by, a publishing house, then you are going to be edited. So you really need some thick skin.
Yeah.
And because none of it's meant maliciously. It's just you're all on the same team, but it's about making the story the best it can be.
Yeah.
You know, and you have to go forward with that in mind, rather than thinking this is amazing and people should worship it.
If they don't like it, they don't understand my book.
Yeah,
they don't understand me as a writer.
Exactly.
No, you just need to, but you want everyone to understand it. It's funny because I saw a review on Goodreads for As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner, and the lady said, anyone can write something incredibly confusing that only the author understands, but it's very hard for an author to write something that everyone can understand and relate to, on a personal level. So again, evoking that emotion, and agents and editors have a pretty good nose, don't they, for obviously talking about Julie. She's awesome, but she's got a great, like her suggestions make Matt Quinn a more of a central character, and look at that. That's right. So cool. Right, we have another question here from Philip Chase. He said, my question for Papa Gwynne: what is your formula for raising such well-read, articulate, well-behaved and charismatic children? Feel free to embarrass Edward and William. Feel free to embarrass William with a story of youthful mischief. Thanks.
Well, Philip, my answer to that would be that you don't know them. No, actually, to be fair, I have to blame my wife for that, because she's done the job of raising them into these wonderful young men that they are. I've put swords in their hands and shields in their hands, but I think she's put the kindness in their hearts.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
And now Mama would have stopped watching, so that's the real thing.
I did it all.
Well, we kind of blame you, but thank you for instilling this love of reading into us, don't we? Because, I was talking earlier about how we used to go on a dog walk, and you were telling me all about Beren and Luthien, telling me about 12 by Jasper Kent, and I was just like, this stuff's amazing, and just making you want to read even more. So.
But that's also put my life in danger. Like when my bookshelf caved in on me in the night above my bed, I put so many books on it that it just gave way. I was just buried under.
And
this
you
pile
didn't
of
say,
books.
"Oh no, son." You said,
I think I went back to sleep.
You need more books.
Let's put another shelf.
I think we're having some stories about you instead. But so we do blame you, but we also thank you.
I'll take that in the chin.
Well,
it's a fair cop.
There's a beard there.
Yeah, you can't
take any blow. Here's a great one. So someone said, please ask John which music he usually listens to when he's writing.
Okay, so that's kind of changed through the years. When I started writing Malice, and the Banished Lands, it was film soundtracks, really.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, Last of the Mohicans,
so good.
Gladiator,
awesome. Yeah.
Dracula. I love the soundtrack to Dracula. So those kind of things.
Nothing but I have a feeling I know what scenes you write when you're listening to Dracula, or what
that'd be a game.
What race of people you're writing. Someone with leathery wings, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I think actually you can find all of your playlists on your YouTube channel, which we can leave a link below so you can find them.
Oh, great! Yeah.
And what about the next series? When people are reading Shadow of the Gods, what do you think they could listen to? So
I've been listening exclusively to kind of Norse flavoured stuff. So authentic folk bands like Wardruna and Heilung.
Just to distill that atmosphere.
Authentically terrifying. Awesome.
Yeah, they're very atmospheric stuff. So when you've got your headphones on and you're just in your world, it's very evocative of what I'm trying to write. So that's really helped me.
That's like when me and Edo just kind of kill each other. You're just listening to that and you just do not hear.
No, music is essential for me to write. That's part of my process. I write much better when I've got my headphones on and can just get lost, partly because you guys are often smashing the house up. I just don't want to hear it.
You just zone out. It's better to not know. It's like ignorance is bliss, isn't it?
Exactly.
And Ryan said, "Can you ask him if I'm too old for him to adopt?"
Sure thing, Ryan.
Yeah, done.
Come and join the warband. No problem.
There's your answer. And we'll have one final one from the readers' questions. I'm sure we'll do another interview with you at some point, as we have hopefully unlimited access.
Just drag
but
you in here.
Will Damien Lynch be doing the audiobooks for Shadow of the Gods?
No, he won't actually. The decision was made after conversations with my publisher that I thought it's a new series, so a new voice would probably work well with that. So it's a chap called Colin Mace who is narrating. He messaged me the other day to say it was all done.
Cool.
So I'm looking forward to having a little listen to that.
Yeah, Damien did a great job with the Banished Lands.
Absolutely,
all the Irish kind of vibes with it as well. And but I think it'd be quite cool, especially as someone who listens to a lot of audiobooks, to hear a new voice for your kind of writing as well. And
sure. Colin
Mace, I've heard, has done a great job with other audiobooks, so that'd be cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Like you said, I think Damien did a great job with the Banished Lands, and I loved what he did. But it just, it's a new world, new voice, and that's the decision.
And new Icelandic words.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Actually, we're going to sneak in one more question just because we can. This is from Alex, and he said, "Which characters have you based on Ed and I?"
Do not say Calidus and Lygos.
Okay, so
or Craft.
That boat has sailed.
I've said many times before, Drem was inspired by you, Will. One of the main POVs of Blood and Bone. He's, as I think most people know that speak to you, you're on the autistic spectrum, which you're happy to talk about. And he is too. He's a quirky character that has a lot of your traits.
It's a lot braver though.
Yeah,
I couldn't fight bears.
Like correcting people when they state inaccuracies.
Statistics.
I've learned not to as
much. One of your endearing qualities.
Wrong. No, I've learned not
to. Checking your pulse when you're feeling a bit stressed or anxious. It's something you've done for many years.
Seeing the world in just kind of a different light.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not a problem. It's just different. So that's what I tried to put into Drem. Is that it's not a problem to be fixed. Not at all. You're wonderful and lovely just the way you are. It's just approaching the world in a slightly different angle. That's all. As far as Ed, so there's probably not a POV, but have probably inspired some of my side characters. I think there's something of you in Cullen in the Blood and Bone series, and also in Svik in
Do you love cheese?
You do like your cheese,
honestly.
But more your humour. I think you'll see in those characters.
Sharp, snappy.
That's why I laughed so much at Svik then. Oh. I just thought, I know this guy. I feel I've met him somewhere. Good, that's good to know. I'm glad you didn't base Craft on me, which wouldn't have surprised me, especially when you started writing Craft.
To be honest, Craft's one of my favourite characters.
If Craft said, why? Or can you do this?
Exactly.
Just some little anecdotes there.
That's right,
yeah. Oh, Dad, that's been so much fun just to kind of have a little natter about books. We don't get too much time nowadays because we're all so busy, and obviously you're writing, and then other stuff with the family. It's hard to kind of try and sneak away for a couple of hours, and just ask you loads of questions, really. But I think it'd be really interesting to see what readers think of Shadow of the Gods as well. That's coming out soon. That's really exciting.
So May the 4th be with you in the US, in cohesion there, and in the UK on the 6th.
That's right. Well, thanks for inviting me out here, boys. It's nice to sit in the freezing cold.
I mean, this is technically
and be
your
peppered
office,
just with like an interrogation.
Yeah, I was trying to lie to my eye.
Yeah.
But thank you. It's been good fun.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it too.
So thank you everyone for watching. I hope you've enjoyed talking a bit about the new series and a bit about your John Gwynne, Papa Gwynne's former writing. But for now, take care. Truth and courage.
Thanks, my lovely boys.
Truth and courage.
The Brothers Gwynne.
Truth and courage.